I'm Allie with Potomac Beads, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to simply wrap a Rivoli with wire, creating prongs to make a nice set of Rivoli earrings. So for this material list, it's going to change based on the size of the Rivoli. One thing you want to realize is that we're working on making prongs. And to make these prongs, it's going to determine basically what size Rivoli you're doing, as well as the size is going to affect the number of loops as well as the thickness. Because I'm using a 14 millimeter Rivoli, I have approximately 10 inches of my 20 gauge artistic wire, and then I have approximately 20 inches of my 24 gauge wire. I have a Sharpie marker here and my round nose pliers to help create my prongs. I'm going to take my Sharpie, and you can see I have a little bit of a faded line there, and I'm going to remark exactly where I'm going to hold in order to make my loops for my prongs. What we're going to be doing is making 5 loops, and then we're going to make a prong. We're going to be wrapping along the actual sides here of the 20 gauge wire, and I'm holding basically the end of the 20 gauge wire and the end of the 24. I'm going to intersect the 24 gauge wire so that it's sitting on top of the 20 gauge wire, and I'm going to wrap away from me and pull towards me. I'm going to get 5 wraps in, and then I'm going to do my first prong. Once I have those 5 wraps and kind of push them together, you'll start to realize that this can basically move along that 20 gauge wire. That's why it doesn't really matter where we start the coils, and I'm holding at the end so I don't have more to wrap over. I'm now going to go in with that loop size, and I'm going to create the loop around my round nose pliers right at where that mark is. I'm going around the round nose pliers over top of them, which is going to create a little bit of a loop to one side of my 20 gauge wire. Holding that loop a little bit, then I'm going to coil again. 5 more wraps this time, and then another coil. The next coil is actually going to go to the back of the Rivoli. We're going to have prongs to the back and prongs to the front. After 5 wraps, we are going to do another loop. This loop I want to sit opposite of the first one. So we're going to do 5 wraps, and then we have the loop sitting up. This time we're going to do our 5 wraps, and then holding right at that line again, the loop's going to go up as well, sitting kind of zigzagging, almost like a ladder step. 5 more wraps, and then another one gets made. Holding again at that line, going over the top of the round nose pliers, and then back into my loops. For me, it's all about accuracy when it comes to wire wrapping, and I don't want it to look messy. I want it to look very much so like a jeweler's bezel set nice piece of jewelry. So I'm going to continue building on my 5 wraps and going every other way in order to create my prongs to hold in my Rivoli. I thought I would show you this view as well to show you how close I actually hold my piece when I'm working with it. I have 5 prongs to the top and 4 to the bottom. I'm going to get it so that I have 7 to the top, which is going to lead 6 to the bottom. I'll have 7 in the back, or 7 in the front rather, and 6 to the back. And I hold it really close to my face when I'm working at it. I think it makes it easier to work with it and kind of coil when I hold it really, really close and wrap slowly around and do my coiling. Bring it down a little bit to grab my pliers. Make sure as you're holding your pliers and you're bringing it towards your face that you're not hitting yourself with the wire, and continuing on. Again, I'm going to have, with those 5 coils, I'm going to have 7 of my prongs facing towards the top here. 1 more to go, and that's going to leave me 6 to the bottom. So it's going to be an uneven amount from the top to the bottom of the prongs as you're working with them. So to focus and see, you can see those 5 spacings. The prongs are sitting identical in size because I held them with those round nose pliers, and I'm continuing on till I have 1 more bottom prong and 1 more of my top prongs. So when you finish doing your initial coils, you again have 6 to the bottom and 7 to the top. The 6 on the bottom are going to go to the back of the piece. The 7 on the top are going to go to the front of the piece. How many to do and how do you know how long to make it? That's going to take some practice as far as the actual spacing that you want to do. The reason I know exactly how many to do is because I already tried it multiple times on a different size pendant. If I am doing something like a 26 millimeter fancy stone Rivoli type, I am going to use a thicker wire. I'll coil with 22 or 20 gauge and use an 18 gauge wire as my base to make sure that it stays a little bit stiffer as I'm working with it. From here, you're going to notice you have a little bit of extra wire. That's fine. Keep it on there for now. This wire is then going to get bent in a rounded shape around the Rivoli pendant, again with those 6 prongs going to the back and the 7 kind of starting to stay towards the top. I have this extra wire sitting here and we'll eventually cut it off, but for now I'm just going to leave it kind of hang out there. This is going to hold our Rivoli in place with those prongs getting towards the center. For my first step, before I even really round it out, what I want you to do is create prongs with those loops to the back. To do so, you want to grab your needle nose pliers, and you're going to go in, again, make sure you're at the 6 portion, and you're literally going to pinch that loop together. And you can see basically the wire sits right over top of itself, and you lose that loop look. Again, pinching it together, going right down along the line. So I'm going to continue right along the line, pinching and flattening out all 6 of those prongs that are going to go right along the back. This also stiffens the wire, and as we bend it around the piece, this will really hold that Rivoli in place. So if you can see here along my tree, basically squishing them together, those 2 pieces of wire that create the loop are going to sit right next to one another, and you have this nice flat edge that's created that's going to bend to the back. Along the front, I still have that loopiness going on, and I'm going to have my front and my back be different in look. So what I'm going to do now to the front side is take my needle nose pliers and turn those loops towards the front. This is going to make sure that you don't have the wire crossing over at all. You just have that looped look again towards the front. If you want to, you can even put your round nose pliers in there to help with the turn, so you do not affect the actual shape of the loop when you're working with it. Once you're done, you should have 6 closed loops towards the back, and you should have 7 open loops towards the front. We're now going to bend this into our rounded shape, which is going to basically have those prongs set along the side of the piece. Bend it into your actual 14 millimeter oval shape, where the wire, the thicker wire, basically the 20 gauge wire, is going to cross over itself. I'm going to take my needle nose pliers and bend the long piece of wire straight up, and I'm going to bend the shorter piece of wire around that long piece 1 time, moving out of the way that thinner gauge of wire. This is going to create the loop for my Rivoli to sit inside of. If you want to, then you can take your wire cutters, cut down that extra wire, or you can keep it on. I'm going to cut it down so it's 1 less wire to have there, and just kind of tuck in that piece of wire so that way I get my nice rounded loop. This rounded loop, then, you can see I'm working with the artistic wire, which is going to be a dead soft. If you are working with sterling silver or gold-filled wire, same thing, work with a soft wire. At this point here, you want to make sure that your Rivoli is going to sit in. I want the coils to be right along the side, but I don't want it so big that it's swimming. If you need to, you can bend and take out a couple of the coils that are along the sides, and do that kind of a little bit prior to cutting off that extra wire to make sure that it's going to sit in there nicely around the piece. Sometimes you may need to go in and just kind of give a little squish to that coil and pull the loop just a little bit tighter to make sure that it's going to fit that Rivoli setting if it's a little bit too big. If it's a little bit too small, you can bend the wire back out and take that extra gauges of the extra pieces of the 24 gauge wire and coil a little bit more. Now that I know it's my correct size, I'm actually going to cut off the extra 24 gauge wire so I don't have a lot of wire sticking out and affecting myself as I go in and bend my prongs. So at this point here, I have my 7 loops to the front. It should pretty much be even, that your bottom loop is going to sit directly in the bottom from the wire coming out the top. And then along the back, you have those pointy 6 prongs sitting there ready to go. Because your wire is pretty soft, we're going to start this next portion with our actual fingers. We're going to start bending the prongs down towards one another. I'm not putting my Rivoli in yet. I'm just giving kind of a nice little bit of a twist there with my front looped prongs, kind of bending them in towards the piece. Once you have them bent in towards the piece, you can turn around and kind of open up those back prongs a little bit if they happen to get bent in. Slide your Rivoli in, kind of click it right in there. And now you're going to go through, if you need to use your pliers, if your fingers aren't strong enough, certainly do that. You can do a nylon jaw pliers. You're just going to start slowly, I do this with my fingers first, going in and bending the prong down towards the Rivoli. Naturally, these prongs are going to want to bend in because the wire is going to want to sit along itself in the coil, bending this along the sides. It doesn't take much to actually get your Rivoli in place there and to bend those nice kind of looping wires. What you can do then, and I would suggest doing this along the back of the piece, you can kind of use a little bit of Permalac too along the back, which is a nice little adhesive here that is going to keep the back from scratching up. But you're going to put your Rivoli in there, make sure that it's sitting correctly, and then with my pliers, I'm basically going to pinch down along my prongs along the side of the piece to keep that Rivoli nice and in place. I'm not really worrying about the front yet because I'll get the back into place before I worry about going in and making the front look nice. But I now have the back in place, and actually it's not going anywhere. It's in there secured already. But you can go through if you want to and kind of round out those prongs a little bit down towards the center. Once you have the piece, you should have about equal distance between those 6 prongs along the back. I know the silver is hard to see on the silver. And then as we come to the front, if you want to, you can go in. If you don't want that loopy look, you can go in and kind of straighten out. I'm not going to do it because I want the loopy look, but ahead of time, if you wanted to, you could have made that more of that prong look like we did along the back rather than the loops, or you can keep that loop look to the front. If you want to, you can hold along the piece then again and right along the front here, not poking at the Rivoli. I'm just pinching right along the edges, kind of pinching that wire down. Once you have those prongs down, if you want to, you can cut off the extra wire, make a loop at the top here. Everything's in there, secure, good to go. I'm going to put, to give it that nice classic look, put a pearl on the top. This is an 8mm pearl that I'm sliding onto that thicker wire right there along the top. Along the top here then I have extra wire, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to coil that extra wire right along the top and make a loop for my ear wire to hang in, and also put a little bit of wire in front of the pearl. Take your round nose pliers, turn your wire after your pearl about 45 degrees and make a loop at the top of your round nose. Switching to the bottom jaw, you're going to complete that loop that's going to sit right above the pearl. If you need help doing this coiled eye pin, you can check out lots of other videos on that as well. Once you have that loop, you can hold on with your flat nose pliers or your round nose pliers, coil around the piece. I'm going to make that loop, and then around the bottom I'm going to coil once and then twice to have that nice coiled appearance of the pearl kind of sitting right on top. You can turn this and kind of get it to look however you want, but that's going to be a nice way to kind of hold in those coiled earrings as you're working with them. Here you can see the example piece versus the piece that I just did. It's a little bit easier to kind of work when you're not working on screen, but they still have those nice holding in and versions of the different prongs as well as those loops. Again, if you are going to do this on a larger scale with a bigger bead, I would suggest doing the same thing with about 18 and 20 or 22 gauge wire. All you're going to have to do now after you have these Rivoli earrings ready to go is put in some ear wires onto the loops, and you'll have your easy coiled wire wrapped earrings. Remember, this is kind of a way to give you an idea about some wire working. Many of you are intimidated by that. Don't be intimidated, try it out. It's okay if you waste a little bit of wire to get it nice and sitting well on the Rivoli. Thanks so much for watching these easy coiled Rivoli earrings. Remember, you can get a really kind of high-end look without doing a lot of seed beading with just some simple wire techniques of coiling around a thicker piece of wire. You can really have fun. You can see how they really glisten and shine and give that nice jeweler's look to them. Again, if you need any of the materials, you can go below the video to the links that are in the description to order from us online at PotomacBeads.com as well as PotomacBeads.eu. You can also subscribe to this YouTube channel to get regular updates when we do new videos, go live, have tutorials, and better beader episodes to help you with your craft. Thanks so much for watching, and enjoy working with wire and creating your own wire-wrapped Rivoli earrings.